Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started.
Christine Ramos, author of A Journey into Being, is just fantastic. We could have talked for hours about how her book merges the science and the woo-woo of pre-pregnancy, birth, and parenting. It's so up my alley. If you're looking for inspiration to possibly have another child, well, let me tell you, this book is for you. Christine stimulates all sorts of mind-opening questions as to how you were before getting pregnant and how you are now as you parent. Barely touched the surface of her knowledge, and I hope to bring her back to dive deeper into the lessons in her book. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and as always, let me know what you think. Christine Ramos is a published author, maternal child health registered nurse, childbirth educator, doula, and internationally board-certified lactation consultant. She is also an intuitive empath who perceives the human energy field. Before becoming an RN, Christine was a social worker for 10 years, working therapeutically with people who had mental health and substance abuse issues. Currently, Christine is a contributing editor for health, parenting, and spirituality publications worldwide. Her book, A Journey into Being, Knowing and Nurturing Our Child as Spirit, is in its second edition and available on Amazon and other book outlets worldwide. Born and raised in New York City, Christine now lives in Long Island, New York, with her husband and children. Her website is www.intuitivenurturing.com. Christine, I'm so happy you're here today to share your book with us. Let's just get right into this. In 2004, that was your first publication?
Well, 2004 is when I wrote it, and in 2006 is when Ozark Mountain Publishing published it. That was the first edition. Just in 2021 is when I released the second edition, all updated with the most recent scientific facts and all of that, which is astounding. Every day, something new is coming up that confirms what I wrote over a decade ago. And it's just a really exciting time for me because I'm seeing all of this stuff come to fruition. I'm such a person of science and spirituality blending. I'm a person who always looks for science to catch up with spirituality.
Ooh, I love that.
Definitely. I think it's just a matter of science creating the tools so that they can get a glimpse into the spiritual.
The Institute of Noetic Science. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
Hello. Amazing. What they're coming out. Oh, it's just so incredible. I love it. If listeners haven't ever heard of it, go look it up. IONS, IONS. It's amazing. So I was thinking in 2004, you're writing this. 2006, it's published. You had to have blown some people away with some of your stuff. And I mean, let's start with just, how do you describe your book? Like, because it is a mix and I just adore it. It's such a mix of science and spirituality and pregnancy and birthing and all. So how do you describe it?
I describe it kind of like what to expect when you're expecting, but the spiritual perspective. And it goes through everything from preconception to adulthood. I think it also has the reader examining their own lives as we go through this journey. It has the reader looking at themselves and seeing how they can grow and develop spiritually in terms of helping their own children or any child in their life. This doesn't only apply to parents. I always say that. I've had people read the book who don't even have children, and they've gotten something out of it. Because again, it has the reader look at themselves in a way that is tracking from the time that they were born up until adulthood and taking a look at, well, what about the trials and tribulations that I've been through? How does that shape who I am? Am I expanding in love? That's the main point of the book, to look at ourselves, look at the children around us, and help each other to move toward that expansion, to help each other to live in a better, more conscious world.
You reached out to me, and I'm so excited that you did, because you said, listen, I've listened to this podcast and I think we're a good fit. And one, it's such a compliment, because I do think it's a really beautiful fit of you taking science and woo-woo, intuition and statistics, and merging it together. I mean, I don't tell my husband this, but literally as I was reading it, I'm like, I really would like to have another baby, just to be able to approach it from such a different aspect. And we are not having another baby, but it's magical what you've done, and you've been able to, like you said, it is about from preconception to all the way to adulthood. And I found myself reading it thinking, how did that affect me as an adult? How did that impact my child? What did I do that can negatively impact Teal? And what am I doing that can positively? And it just really does cause you to analyze. I mean, I could not read this book really quickly because it caused me to pause and to really think about, who am I creating? Who am I helping to create, really? And how is she helping to create me? Which I talk about a lot. I mean, she teaches me every day. And I don't really know what question I have there for you, but you just really have empowered me to look differently at my relationship with my daughter.
And that was the exact intention of the book. You just thrilled me, because what you just explained is exactly what I wanted the reader to feel, to go through, to examine, to consider. Again, not just for their child or their children, but for themselves, and to take a good look at themselves in terms of, how do I expand through having this child in my life? And how do I help them to align themselves with their most authentic selves, so that they can come here and do what they're supposed to do, which is to help us expand as all of us as a collective consciousness. And I do believe that when a new child comes into this world, as we all know, remember how ancient philosophers would say that we come into this world as a blank slate. People like you and me, we know that's not true.
I was like, nope.
Absolutely not. We had an existence before this lifetime, and we'll have many afterwards. And so we bring forth those experiences. We may look like our mother or father or both, but our soul is totally our own, with our own sets of weaknesses and strengths, and with an imprint also of the lives that we had before, and we carry them forward. I always say that nurturing the inner being of a child is like having access to that sacred gift that they have for the world. And with that access, you have that privilege to bring them up in a way that best aligns them with their authentic selves, so that they are best prepared for this world and best prepared to elevate it, in my opinion.
I agree. They are here to elevate, to raise the consciousness of humanity.
Yes.
It's just so apparent to me that these little beings are so much more intelligent than us. We let them lead. Like, if we really do let them lead their own development, that is powerful, to let our child be the leader of their existence. And then, okay, let's talk. What is intuitive nurturing? Let's go there, because you do talk about it in the book quite a bit.
So intuitive nurturing is just a set of practices to enhance the vibrational communication between you and your child. So all babies process their environment through the language of energy and the information of energy. So what intuitive nurturing helps you do is help you to understand that language, so that you can tailor your caregiving specifically for that child. It's also understanding the basic premise that we all come into this life with the goal of expanding in love, but not only for ourselves, but for those we're sharing this time and space with, right? So we're all part of this soul group, Have you heard how we come into this life and we usually go through lifetimes after lifetimes within a soul group, and we're each taking turns to help each other to advance?
Yeah. So an example of that would be my mother was my sister in a previous life, or my father was a brother.
That's exactly it. So intuitive nurturing is our set of methods, like I said, that helps you to address the vibrational weaknesses and strengths that this child has. So case in point, what's really, really exciting for me right now in terms of science is that they have proven how a person's consciousness is non-local. This is actually being proven as we speak. And how when you are close to somebody, the other person's consciousness will merge with the person who's close to you. And this is very nuanced. But the reason why this is so important to what I wrote and what the information I'm trying to put forth for people who have a child in their life is that intuitive nurturing is all about that factor of a person's vibrational consciousness having this ability to merge with another person's. And so for a child, their integrity, their vibrational flow is so erratic and it's so unstable and disorganized that when we are close to the child, or when other people are close, they sense that vibration, they sense that energy, and it could either be very beneficial for them in the sense that they resonate with it, or it can be very disruptive for them and they can feel even more chaotic. So, have you ever heard of skin to skin contact or kangaroo care?
Absolutely. I believe that is chapter 10 or 11 of your book, but I have already actually heard about it. We did it with Teal, and it was really tricky, because I found myself reading your book and thinking, oh gosh, we did some of that, but you talk about the importance of touch. And I know we're going to get there when you talk more about it, but I didn't get to have Teal on me until like 10 hours after I had given birth. She was 2 pounds, 1 ounce, cesarean section, emergency, get her out, etc. And I remember holding her, but then they instruct you, be careful. You can't rub her skin. Her skin sensitivity is too, like, you can't do that. And so they allowed me to hold her once a day.
Okay.
And I totally abused that. In other words, I was like, great, no problem. I'll show up at 9 p.m. and I will hold her until 1 or 2 in the morning. Which I did. I had a hotel room at the hospital, like literally for 6 weeks. That's what I would do. 9 o'clock, I would show up. I mean, I was with her all day, but they would put her on me and I would hold her until like 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I would go home to the hotel and pump and then go to sleep for 4 hours. And then I'd come back and I was with her for the whole day. But she'd be in the isolette and you get your hands in there and you just could hold. I couldn't stroke her skin. And for the longest time. So we did as much as we could, but you were going to talk about the science behind kangaroo care and skin to skin. So let's go there.
Would they encourage it though?
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely did. And
so that's what's important.
Yeah, we just had to be really careful of, she was 2 pounds. I thought I was going to put my fingers, literally, I remember thinking, I am going to put my thumbs through her chest. She was smaller than a Cabbage Patch doll, like way smaller.
Oh, so precious.
Anywho, but yes, they definitely encouraged it.
Okay, good. Because I've had podcast interviews all over the world, and there are some places where they wouldn't even allow them to touch them, which is such a crime, in my opinion. It's a crime because you are depriving this child of that, the benefits of your vibrational imprint of love on this child. So getting back to the science of this, what they have absolute proof and evidence of is that when you do kangaroo care or skin to skin regularly for a child and up to about a year to 2 years, what happens is that, like I said, your consciousness merges with your child, and this helps to strengthen their neural system. So what does that mean? It strengthens all of the body's organ systems for this child. And again, when a baby is born, their inner workings are very chaotic. It's disorganized. I mean, and spiritually, if you want to think about it, just envision this expansive being, a being of light, now having to be condensed in this tiny little body, and the world is assaulting you with all of these perceptions and sensory input, sounds, lights, touch. And might I say, the touch is not very kind either. When a baby is born, a
No.
baby is roughed up quite a bit. The heel sticks and all of the other stuff. A baby's energies are very chaotic. And what kangaroo care and this type of close contact with the baby, it has proven without a shadow of a doubt all of these wonderful benefits of improving every organ system, strengthen the immune system, better brain functioning. And as they grow, we just had a longitudinal study done on children who had regular kangaroo care or close contact. And they found that these children had better regulation of their emotions. They had greater empathy for others. They had better management of stress and enhanced relationships with their peers. I mean, that's amazing. So all of this is directly related to that, what I call like a spiritual or vibrational synchrony that occurs with the parent or the caregiver that embraces them in love, because they're receiving, they're sort of sheltered in your vibratory field.
It's like a cocoon. Like I see it as I just saw it in my head, like my clairvoyance. I was just like, oh, it's bringing the little ones, and I'm even getting shivers. And it doesn't even have it doesn't have to be just our little ones. It can be our teenagers. And if we visualize them entering, oh, I'm getting shivers. I love this concept.
Me too.
Just like wrapping them in a cocoon of our energy and letting them bathe in it and just ease, like just, okay, yes, we're going to be all right. We don't know how right now, but we're going to get there. We're going to be just fine. This is part of the plan, which you do talk a lot about, is that there is a plan that we agree to. And I've talked on the episodes before that I do some automatic writing. And this morning I had this most beautiful thing as a result of reading your book. I saw myself and my spirit guide holding, I'm getting emotional, holding my hand. And we were like sitting on a little ledge and we were swinging our feet. And he was like, you're going to be okay down there. It's good. And I was just, but you talk about this agreement that we have before we come in. And so I'm going to stop crying, but I would love you to talk a little bit about that, because as a parent with a child with special needs, it kind of gives you a little bit of a time to breathe and to realize the purpose. So I'm going to let you talk.
Oh, sure. But thank you for that. The fact that my book touched you in such a way is so rewarding for me. You have no idea. It really is. And thank you for that. So yeah, this idea of these agreements and these contracts that we come into this world with, the intention is always to learn and expand in love. And I go through several different scenarios that we can go through, and one of them is like sacrificial development. That's one of the ones I call it. And all that is about is an agreement with another spiritual being, before we come into this world, obviously, where the entity can agree to sacrifice itself during a lifetime as a way to motivate change for that other individual. And again, that motivation for positive change is all about learning spiritual lessons and expanding in love. So an example of this would be something like a soul choosing to be born with significant physical challenges, let's say, such as I know Teal has some challenges.
Yeah.
And the idea is for the people who this child touches to see life in a way they've never seen it before, to develop more sensitivity to things they never had sensitivity about. I was recently interviewed by someone who lost their son, and she said to me that she began this whole new life of podcasting and spreading words of love and spirituality and that kind of deep love that is far from any type of illusion. And she said she did this all, she started it all because of her son's death. And I can't tell you how many people she touches with her podcast and her beautiful soul now that she's broadcasting to the world.
Yeah.
And it is all a direct result of her loss. So that's what I mean by sacrificial development. It's a beautiful covenant between you and another soul that says, I'm going to do this for you. I am going to lovingly give you challenges so that you can grow. And that's what that's about.
Oh, Christine. I think I cried for like about 5 minutes of that. Well, no, but I think it's a hard concept because you hear the word sacrificial, and I was raised Christian, I was raised Lutheran, and I think of sacrifice and it's something that scares me, like, oh, but at the same time, knowing that Teal chose, which I do believe that she chose, she made that contract to come down here and have her physical limitations. She chose that for the development of me, but not just me, her mom. I mean, her father and every single person that is touched by her life. Truthfully, every single person that is listening to this podcast, she knew that this would be the impact of her arrival. And that lightens the load a little bit of how I look at her. And I've always looked at her as a hugely intuitive being, of a hugely intelligent being, far grander than me. And then to add that on top of it is just really a beautiful way of lifting the weight a little off my shoulders.
Yes. I always say that the bond between parent and child, or even grandparent and child, anybody who has a deep loving relationship or deep loving bond with a child, it's like having these spiritual lessons on steroids, because it just propels you. There is no other love as strong as that between, a parent and child, or a parental type of love for a child. There's nothing greater. I mean, I'm sure many people would agree with me.
Yeah. I remember, and I actually was just telling my cousin this, and I remember thinking, oh, I didn't even know I had that part of my heart.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I do tell people that are contemplating or saying, oh, I don't really want children. I'm like, that's all fine. Because I didn't know what I didn't know. And if you don't know what you don't know, then you don't mourn what you don't know, which is completely acceptable and completely fine. But for me, I remember literally thinking, holy crow, I didn't even know this part of my heart existed before this little being entered. and
Oh,
you
it's
have
so true.
three. Yeah, it is. Yes. So
So
one of, I'm like, yes, it is, as a matter of fact. Sorry.
okay.
Okay. Well, I want to read some of the statements from your book because I mean, goodness, I sent you pages and pages of notes of things, and I want to read this and I want to read that. And so I'm just going to pick something from chapter 4 here, where you said, your child, just as all of us are, will be born with the goal of achieving spiritual growth and development through the use of human experience. Lovingly encouraged by a higher consciousness and assisted by her guides, she carefully selects a situation that would best foster this development. It is important to understand that a discarnate soul, we are involved in the process of choosing our incarnate situation. It is a decision based on our individual evolutionary issues as well as that of the collective consciousness. Why is this so important for you to understand, you say? For two reasons. First, it helps you to see through the illusions of randomness in life. And second, it discourages contempt and blame on God when bad things happen to good or innocent people, especially children. Yes, as difficult as it is to accept, there is healing, balancing, and even justice in events we see as tragic. This statement will become clearer as you read on. That's exactly everything what we were talking about in a little summary of your magical words. But it truly is realizing. I mean, I thought that was just a good thing because I know there are so many people listening that are in a very troubled state and wondering, why the heck is this happening to me?
Yes. Thanks again for that, because it's so rewarding to hear my own words coming out of somebody who is appreciating that. Um, One thing, again, about the science with spirituality, one thing that science has recently discovered is that people who have that spiritual perspective, that perspective that you just read, how, we look past these illusions of randomness and contempt for God because things didn't go the way that we planned. When we look past that and we capture this type of spirituality, it actually fosters a protective neurochemical balance in your brain. And it's protective against things like anxiety and major depression. And this has been seen on like functional MRIs and spectroscopy and all kinds of imaging that they do on the brain. They actually have seen how it's protective in terms of the type of mental issues that we can come across when we have these crises in our lives. So yeah, it's for me it's an exciting time because I
Yeah.
specifically wrote the book for those of us who are in a more science type of field. I specifically wrote it for for it to be more palatable, for it to be more digestible, and for people to actually say, you know what, this might be proven sometime in the near future, which it's happening right now. It's happening. It's so exciting.
Now, I will say your first chapters are pretty intense from a woo-woo perspective. You still add in the science, but I mean, you introduce chakras. Well, let's start there. Okay, what is a chakra or a chakra, depending upon how you say it? What is that for someone who isn't understanding that yet?
So, well, I'll go through both the layers and the chakras. How's that? Okay, so the layers, by the way, the reason why I know this, and I know it like it's almost part of my vocabulary now, it's part of my being now, because I also do therapeutic touch, which is a form of hands-on healing. But aside from that, a huge portion of what I write in my book comes from direct perception of the human energy field. I can honestly say that I navigate my life primarily through how I experience energy. So when I wrote these specific parts about, the anatomy of energy and the anatomy of the human energy field, these are things I perceive almost as though it's part of one of my five senses. So in terms of the bodies or the layers of energy that surround a person, you have like the first layer is called the physical layer. And then there's the emotional layer, the mental layer, and the astral layer. There are many more layers, and they get finer and higher in vibration, and they are associated with our higher selves. Then you have the chakras. The chakras are energy vortices. They're energy centers that run up and down the center of our bodies, kind of like along our spines. And there's 7 of them, but there's actually many more chakras that are throughout our body, but they are the main ones. And so you have the root chakra, you have sacral, you have the solar plexus, the heart, the throat,
I'm going through it with her. Nobody can see why she's laughing. I'm literally touching all my spots as she's talking about them. Sorry.
That's right. I forget they're not going to see this. Okay. So yes, the brow and the crown. And I talk a lot about how the inherent truths within the chakra system, how they can be such a beautiful guide in terms of raising our children, right? If I could go through them really quick. So you have the root chakra, right? And you're familiar with all of the inherent truths, I'm sure.
We are. Well, I am. I'm not sure everyone listening is. So if you just want to give a quick summary, let's do it. I think it's educational and valuable.
Sounds great. So we start with the root. So the root chakra, it tells us things about universal intent, safety, security. It's our physical grounding point to earth. So in terms of raising our children, we make sure that they know that they are safe, they're secure. Them coming here is filled with universal intent.
And we can say those words to them.
Oh, absolutely.
You can say those words to them before, and you talk about this in the book, like you can say it before they're even conceived. You can say, this is going to be a safe environment for you. I promise to love you, and I promise to provide for you, and promise to help you understand your greater purpose here. You can say those things, and I need to say it every day to Teal, even though she's 6, like continuing to remind our children.
Absolutely. And I love what you just said. Absolutely. So then if we go to the sacral chakra, that's the chakra that deals with one-on-one relationships, interpersonal bonds, and creativity. So what is the first relationship our baby has? It's with us. So we need to make sure that we respond to our baby's needs promptly, because this becomes the basis of trust for our children's future relationships, right? So they learn the value of one-on-one relationships and how we honor them and how we make sure that we are trustworthy. And also we encourage their creative expression within a safe and loving environment. Jumping to the solar plexus. Now, this is the energy center of self-esteem, self-worth, self-image, self-identity. And one of the things I talk a lot about is, think about how difficult that is these days with social media, and how young adolescent girls are committing suicide at an alarming rate. And it's all based on manufactured images that aren't based in reality. They're not real. It's so important to instill with our children, you are beautiful just the way you are. You are magical. You are this being of light that is just absolutely beautiful. I don't care what this child looks like. I don't care what type of challenges they have. They are magnificent just the way they are.
Yeah. Teal is quite physically beautiful. She captures people's attention just with her physicalness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying not to say beauty, but I mean, she's just beautiful. She's just a very beautiful child. And
Mm-hmm.
when people say, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful, I also make sure that I add, she's beautiful on the inside as well. And it's really important for us to continue to instill that in our kids and within ourselves. I am beautiful on the outside. I am more beautiful on the inside.
And what I also like to point out to parents and anybody who's bringing up a child is be mindful how you say that to yourself also, because our children pick up everything that we say and we do. You may not even be aware of it, but they're listening and they're picking up on your self-worth, on your a self-identity and your self-image. It forces us to, again, look at ourselves and make sure that we're not projecting those types of insecurities about ourselves on them,
right?
Or that they're not seeing it. It goes both ways. For not only instilling that in our children, make sure you're kind to yourself. Jumping to the heart, it's all about love and self-love. Love for others, forgiveness, hope, trust, compassion. This forgiveness doesn't only apply to others, but we learn how to forgive ourselves. And so it's so important to teach them that we're human. We're yes, we are this being of light and love, but we're also fallible. We're human.
Yeah. We're here in this earth. Yeah.
Okay. And we are going to have lots of mistakes. Forgive yourself. You are a worthy being and you're worthy of your own forgiveness. Teach them that they are worthy of love, that they are to love themselves in their entirely, regardless of any perceived weaknesses or challenges or shortcomings. And they learn to love others without expecting something in return.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. In this instant manifestation, how many likes did I get world?
Yes.
The one thing that as you were talking, I realized, and I think I've talked about this before. I remember the first time I completely apologized to Teal and just said, I'm sorry. Mom was wrong. Like I did not handle that situation right. And I think remembering that too is as we forgive ourselves, it's okay to ask our little ones to forgive us too. We all make mistakes. Yeah, like you said. So.
Oh, absolutely. Very good point. So we jump to the throat, and the throat is all about issues of expression and communication, choice, self-discipline, and will. It bridges the heart with the mind. So our role for our children is to teach them the power of their word, the power of their own personal will. We need to make sure that they understand that we will simply respond to them. It's about them using this energy of their throat chakra and knowing that those expressions, and it doesn't even have to be language, but they're being heard. They're being validated. We live in a society that favors separating babies, right, from their parents, and it promotes this. It promotes new technology over human touch and nurturing. It's so important, in my opinion, that we come back to those roots of simply touch and acknowledging and validating. My child, I hear you, I see you. And so that's the throat.
Well, and I'm going to read something back to you that you wrote on this, because I do have a question about how can I help Teal with this type of expression. I do try to listen to her. So let me read this to you. So it says, this is what you wrote. Our inner being, and this is about the fifth chakra, and it does say it is the through way that bridges the heart and the mind. Is exactly how you opened. Our inner being must have the capacity to express itself, assert its will, and vocally communicate the strength of its spirit. A fully functioning throat chakra enables the soul to orally purge itself of thoughts and emotions that affect its integrity. Even in the absence of formal language, the soul can communicate through the energy of this chakra by means of crying, laughing, shouting, and other vocalizations. In fact, one of the goals of psychotherapy is to open this energy center by encouraging verbal catharsis. Vocalization is a powerful means of expression for the soul. Wonderfully written.
Thank you.
The one thing that my heart hurts is we talk about Tio being verbalish. She does make sounds and she's starting to make a lot more words, but it's hard as we have these children who aren't capable of using words is how do we help this type of expression? Because in the beginning of the book as well, you talk about how if the fifth chakra isn't spinning and open, it can manifest in physical ailments. And so making sure that we're really opening up to this and keeping them open, encouraging them to be open is so valuable. So I'm curious what advice you would give to parents that don't have children that are easily vocalizing.
Again, it doesn't even have to be language. So what I mean by listening to them, it could simply be any kind of vocalization, a grunt, a moan, a squeak, but I hear you. Your words, your vocalizations matter, and it matters to the point that it's going to capture my attention. Obviously, we live in a busy world. That's not to say that with every vocalization that your child makes, I'm gonna sit there and be yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna jump. I can't jump, but that's what I thought about. I was like, oh goodness, but you can't jump all the time. So talk about that.
It's just about when your child needs you to listen, you're there. And again, if a child is nonverbal, it could be just a grunt. It could be a gesture.
Eye contact.
Exactly.
Communication.
It could be body language. The throat is about the intent of the soul, the will of the soul, and its expression. So that expression need not only be through language and voice, let's say. The main thing is, I see you. I'm validating you. I hear you.
I love that. All right. What's the sixth chakra?
This energy center contains issues of clarity, insight, mental processes, including the capacity to learn. By far, the most important thing to communicate to our children in reflection in relation to this chakra is the magnificent power of their minds. Regardless of the skin that they're born in, and despite the disabilities that they may have, whatever they envision themselves doing is worth striving for. So what a child can realize in their lifetime is limitless, right? Especially if it's consistent with their inherent strengths and their incredible inner being. That part is so important, because no matter how many weaknesses a child can have, there's always room for the power of their intent and the power of their manifestation to make changes in this world. Because like I always say, every child, and no matter how short a time they spend on this earthly plane, our world will never be the same. As long as they're here, our world will never be the same. That is the power of that brow chakra. It is the mind. It is their ability to manifest. And it's so important to let our children know that you have this power. This power is yours. You just have to imagine it into being, see it into being in your mind's eye.
I'm reading Into the Magic Shop right now by James Doty, and it's all about the neuroplasticity, but how that works with manifestation and creation and laws of attraction and all that. It's a fascinating book. I encourage people to read it, but it definitely just popped into my head as you were talking, because everything is possible, everything, and we can create it through our minds. So yeah, beautiful. All right, chakra 7.
So the crown. So this center contains our interpretation and connection to a greater power. It reflects our personal search for meaning in this world, our sense of unity with divine creative energy. So it's important that we teach our children the spiritual aspect of their being, that eternal part of themselves that unites all of us as creations of a higher being, and how we are a group of eternal beings sharing this point in time for the development of both ourselves and the collective consciousness. Very, very important, because it also instills in them the sense of how them being here is absolutely purposeful.
Well, and this is just literally scratching the surface of your book. I mean, there is so much amazing information in this book. I highly, highly recommend A Journey into Being by Christine Ramos. We're going to have to bring you back to talk about all the other things in the book, because holy wow. But I did get a question from Kate prior to the interview, and she really wanted to talk about like stories that you have of knowing your child before they come into being or before conception happens. And you have an amazing part in chapter 9, the story about Andrea and her little girl. She had had a miscarriage. They were contemplating whether or not they should have another child or start trying again, etc. And I'm just going to read you what I wrote here. I said, your story of Andrea and her little girl visiting both her husband and her before she had even conceived still gives me shivers. Seriously, I said it's freaky and amazing and miraculous all at the same time. I was there and I could feel her. I could hear her words. You write about this. Would you care to talk about it a little bit more of really what happened? And then the 5 steps that you have to enhance your ability to communicate with your soon-to-be child. And I have them written here if you can't get them all out of your head right away. So will you tell well, I'll read them and you can comment on them. But I love that story because it's so profound. Will you add some light to that?
So remind me, the one where
so the little girl appears to her saying, "Mommy, Mommy,"
yes.
from so Andrea wakes up because she hears a little girl's voice. She hears, "Mommy, Mommy," and she goes into the other room, which just happens to be the future nursery. There's nobody there. She has this happen multiple occasions, and then she doesn't tell her husband because she doesn't want to freak him out. And then she sees this little girl coming out of, very quick instant, sees her coming out of this soon to be nursery at one point, sees her exactly how she looks. And then her husband wakes up from a dream and is completely bothered in a good way, because this little girl appears to him and says, "Please wait for me. I'm coming." Something to that effect. I mean, what a, oh my goodness, story.
Yeah, it's an absolutely true story. I've had quite a few patients and people who I know who have had what I call a visitation before the child is born. And in this case, what makes it so special is because she really was considering not having a child. She said, it was too much for me. The miscarriage was much too much for me to handle emotionally. And she says just the idea of her losing a child again was just too much for her to bear. So both her and her husband were saying, we're going to give it a rest, or we may not even go forward with trying to conceive again. So this occurred, and that's definitely not the only story that I've heard.
I wanted to read the 5 steps. We don't have time to get into them right now, but it's the 5 steps to enhance your ability to communicate with your soon to be child. So first is really the comprehension of what you talk about in your book, and you give more details of that. The second thing is the ability to practice mindfulness and meditation. Third is the awareness of the energy in your own body. Number 4 is interpreting the symbolism of dreams. And then number 5, which I think I would love to end on this because it's such a beautiful thing, is really asking for spiritual guidance through prayer with all of the above. And I can't emphasize enough for me how just continuing or starting the conversation with spirit or my higher being or whomever I call upon, and whomever you as a listener decide to call upon, but the importance of just asking for help. I think especially as parents with children with special needs, I don't ask for help enough from the physical world. I don't ask for enough. I know that. I need to ask my neighbors for more help. I need to ask my friends for more help. But if there's one part that I can start right away, it's asking for more help from my angels and my guides, and just asking them to be with me and help guide me and hold my hand and point me in the right direction, and help me be a better mom to my teal so that we can all be better. So I love that.
Yes, and be open to that guidance, because a lot of times the guidance comes in ways that we may not expect. It could be a book that opens at a certain page. It could be a song and you hear the lyrics and suddenly it has a different meaning, or it applies to you a little too good at the moment. And try to be as specific as possible when you ask for that help. Help me on how to deal with a tantrum. Be specific. How do I deal with this tantrum?
That's such a good reminder. No ask is too small.
Exactly.
Oh, I mean, there are so many questions that we didn't even cover. Like, do our children choose us? Why are some babies more sensitive and reactive than others? There's so much. So I highly recommend that people grab your book. It's available on Amazon, on Kindle, hard copy, soft copy, all of that. And so I just really encourage people to look you up. How can they find you?
My website is intuitivenurturing.com. And I tend to lean more toward Instagram at Christine Ramos _RN.
Well, there's one final question that I have for you. And that is, what is one word that you would use to describe a child with special needs?
Magical, because they're bringing forth an energy and an imprint to this world that is different. And because of that difference, it is making all of us just more tolerant and more noticing of the specialness of children. And to me, that's a courageous child, very courageous child.
I agree. Well, Christine, thank you so very much for joining us today. It's been profoundly moving, and I do really appreciate your time, and we'll definitely bring you back. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say how much I appreciated your questions. They were so insightful and so rewarding for me. So thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found one or two meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.